things. That is the consensus from the Constitution. Then the permission has to come from them who wants to aspire to become a governor, for example. That permission from me, you can't sue IEBC for actually validating whether you actually went through the university you said you went through. And because all this would be online, your admission becomes a smart contract, which you cannot renege. Then that permission would allow a shared ledger, meaning the University of Nairobi would share their ledger of all graduates. This process can take 1 minute, and the candidate is either told you can't run or you would run. And then you can now apply this to almost everything. We are moving from an inefficient past. It was expensive, vulnerable. You remember people ran for governor with fake certificates because there was one clearinghouse. A registrar is the one to sign that you got a degree. And they got a fake documents, became governors, and they became very difficult. But this is going to be very difficult with the blockchain. That's why we say you can't delete it. That is why we need the new technologies. But more important, one that has gone ahead, which everything is underpinned with it, is artificial intelligence. So I wanted to explain how it works and why it has gone, that we are using it without knowing. For example, when you take money from Fuliza or branch, what works behind that system is artificial intelligence. It has gathered the data and knows that you don't pay or you don't refund to people. And because of that, your credit record is, they assess it differently. Then it predicts that this person is likely to default.
Hi, Prof.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. I'll finish in a few seconds. So we are moving from what we used to have, descriptive analytics from the hindsight, where people ask what happened. I think to some organizations at a second level, inside what happened and why, so that they can block it. Foresight, what happened, when and why, and then to predictive, where you can simulate and the systems can do the analytics and decision making. This is where we need the brains now and a lot of people, to a place where it is self-learning and completely automated, where what we call artificial intelligence or cognitive analytics. This is what everything is happening in, including knowing what the child may do better in the days to come. Most of us were told to go to school, you go and learn. Probably we had the mind of a musician, or we could have become better musicians, but there was nothing to predict where our interests would be. Or the people who were dyslexic or people who had autism, the systems just locked them out and they called them foolish. But because of this now, you can actually predict this kid. If you taught them at this speed, you would be able to get out the best out of this child. This is what the government of Kenya has moved towards with competence-based learning, which is going to transform everything. It's the right thing that we have done, but we need to proceed to higher levels. These are banks. If you look at Equity Bank, is leading in terms of lending through the platforms. KCB follows Coop Bank. So things are changing. AI is being used. We don't know that it has been used to be able to create this. But we need to expand from the financial sector to other sectors. as I said, to education, to health, to transport, to everything. Those are the opportunities that we have. In the chaotic transport sector, we could create 1 million jobs if we went into that space. Because if you do very good data analytics and the predictions, then the Matatu owner would earn more money uh, than this. I invested in Matatu some time back, I think 20, 15 years ago. The touts we used to share, but because of this new tech, uh, we can make people invest in that sector because we have systems of analytics, predictions. You can now sit down and know whether you can repay for the vehicle that you want. Um, but we have not moved into that space. So we need to get the young people who are doing coding and other things to take advantage of that. Health is full of opportunities, education full of opportunities. So this is what we've been hoping that our incubation centers can begin to bring out many young people, because data can guide us to create new products that will create jobs for young people. And that's where I fear that even policymakers have not quite understood the supply chain. How do we develop it? How do we create jobs instead of from every now and then we keep on talking, oh, we are going to create jobs. You can't create jobs until there is proper guidance, especially having invested in the infrastructure, which enables what the government and the companies need to do is to digitize. By digitization, data can be extracted. When you have data, you can bring machine learning to make that data to be useful elsewhere for enterprise. And that now would create sustainable enterprises that would hire more people to work. That's how simple it is. So sometimes we complicate things by thinking jobs can be created in certain ways. But with this enablement across Africa, it's only Central Africa where, because of war, you don't have fiber. But fiber is in South Africa, a lot of it. You see, in East Africa, we are having too much of it, even in West Africa. We need to exploit the opportunity by beginning to do digitalization. That's how we get into the digital space. I think the Kenya government is among the first governments in Africa to also bring in what would enable this new space, the digital identity, or the what you call the trusted identity. I think people have begun to pick it. This is going to be very critical going forward, because it is the infrastructure that you need, even in your business, to be able to succeed. I can't talk deeply in this because just know it's a good infrastructure. So I moved so fast. I finished my presentation, and hopefully, if there's any question, I can quickly answer before I leave.
Thank you so much, Prof. That was a very conversation. Actually, you look at it, you just wowed. Thank you so much. I'd like to first give priority to our panelists, maybe Chris, Hartnell, Rosemary, Eric here. Any question to Prof?
Oh.
Okay, good. Okay, I can see Chris should be having a question. It's okay, can proceed. Kindly unmute your mic, Chris. Yes, you could be having a question to him.
Yes, I'm just interested in how the new laws might affect the data industry, because I'm getting out of concern. We have less companies like Tala Branch who analyze your private phone conversations to credit scoring. So do we expect to see a decline in startups and others where they
Data,
Anaweza kasema.
huh?
Anaweza kasema down.
I think I have my question
So,
to connect to the previous one. What about ethics? As we engage in all these engagements with data, and just aligned with what has been asked, Professor, what are your thoughts on developing ethics? The of
Actually, if I think I should have had more time explaining blockchain. That is where ethics should be embedded. That if I say matter cannot be for any other purpose, be even minimization. Um, someone like myself, I would want my health records along with other people to be used to investigate some diseases that may be detrimental to my future. So I need to have that knowledge where I understand that they're doing it. I mean, I would actually sign that my health records should actually be used for that. For like consumer behavior, you voluntarily do something as a consumer, and it becomes illegal when your name is used for having collected data and your name is used. That's straight illegal. But if you are among 1 million people in terms of analyzing behavior to predict the consumer consumption patterns, I don't think that is illegal. So we need, that's why we need blockchain, we need artificial intelligence to protect the consumer while at the same time enabling research. GDPR has that provision. Our data protection law has that provision. It would be very complicated if we said no data is used or no data. Then you don't create more enterprises, which would create more employment, and yet there is no direct infringement or personal infringement. I think that was the thinking behind that.
I think if I can add to what Prof said, Rosemary, we're already seeing business case examples specifically in the realms of blockchain, where there is safe access to non-patient identifiable data sets for crucial medical research. So that is something that is definitely happening, but specifically in blockchain.
okay. Thank you so much. That's also one of our speakers, Eric, joining us from the United Kingdom. At this juncture, allow to just appreciate Prof for finding time to join us for this particular call. We're really happy, we are glad for enabling this intelligent conversation, not just for this generation, but for the forthcoming generation. I know we are moving with speed and we are always going to the fifth industrial revolution, and the characteristics would bear some similarity to what we have in the fourth industrial revolution. But the question is, where are we placed as Africa? We have even achieved the best deemed to be the achievements of the fourth industrial revolution. Thank you so much, Prof. Feel free to follow through the conversation and ask any questions if need be. You're most welcome.
I am sitting in some. Thank you.
I know, I understand. You had informed me earlier. It's okay, no problem. Sure. This juncture, allow me to welcome our next speaker, who is the Chief Data Officer for Absa Bank Kenya. That is none other than Hatnel Ndungi. Hatnel holds an MSc from the Georgia Institute of Technology in the US. Hatnel has also received a key an award from Innovex East Africa as being the most innovative and one of the most smartest chief data officers in Eastern Africa, actually in Africa. He's also received an award as being one of the leading innovators in fintech in the world, the top 100 actually. You're most welcome, Hatnel. Hatnel also is a contributor to Continum. I've read some of his white papers, quite intelligent. So Atnel will be speaking on business data governance, of course, with more inclination to both data management and data security. And it will be followed by Rosemary, who will chip into the conversation because that's also part of our competency. You're most welcome, sir.
Thank you so much, Dennis, for the introduction. That's very detailed. I think I'll just cue my slides and share my screen. Okay. So Dennis, you can confirm you can see my slides, yeah?
Yes, I can see.
Awesome. So thanks, and it's a pleasure just being here and being able to share my experiences in data. I think just to start off is by introducing myself. So I think Dennis has gone ahead and just mentioned some of the key highlights of my career journey. But basically, I can say I'm a data professional. This is my actually 12th year in data and tech. I've been able to lead different transformations in data in top banks. Previously, I was a consultant at KPMG. I was able to look at risk advisory as well as data. I've been able to also guide banks, mostly in Rwanda, Tanzania, Uganda, as well as different NGOs. My career within data actually farmed up very well because when I was in Cooperative Bank, I was able to set up a strategy for them. I also recruited, I think, more than 35 data experts in different capacities. I'm doing the same thing for Absa Bank currently, the Chief Data Officer. Fortunately or unfortunately, the only Chief Data Officer in East and Central Africa. The others are in South Africa. And I think it's a pleasure just to share with you some of the my key experiences in data. I'll focus mostly on data management and governance, but I'll also speak about data maturity. I think from the introductory conversation that I've had, both from Prof and also the earlier speaker, I think it's a journey for SMART to actually be going up the different stages of using data and adopting to 4IR, the fourth industrial revolution. And it's good just to know the different maturity levels that are there and how you can actually be able to scale up. So because of time, I'll dive straight into that. Whatever you're seeing on my screen is basically Gartner's data and analytics maturity level or maturity guide metric. And what I've been using this for the last close to 8 years is just being able to baseline. The version previously was a bit different. This was a bit more refined and came out in 2017. And similar to the life of a human being, an organization has different levels of maturity with regards to data analytics. So if you're a toddler or you're in school, in your high school, allowed to marry, you can't do some things. And similar to the way a human being goes through different stages in life, then as a company, you have to go through different stages of maturity to be able to tap in the best potential you have with regards to data analytics. Also, can just add to my intro. In Absa Bank, I look at different pillars of data. So I have business intelligence analytics, which I think was mentioned by someone earlier. I do take care also of data governance and management, which looks at how we are able to use new kind of laws and regulations to promote for ourselves internally and our customers. To have AI and data science. I think someone is not on mute, but yeah, I also have data science and AI, which looks at exactly how to use statistics, mathematics, and some of those technologies that Prof mentioned to give value back to business. And I have model analytics, which is a bit customized to the banking sector. So all of these kind of capabilities come in different levels of maturity. So on level 1, how do you know that you as a company are on level 1 of maturity? So the first thing here is that you do not exploit data. You basically extract data from your systems and actually make any kind of inferences. So for example, you have a reporting module within your application systems and just pull out data and use it. There's nothing value adding that you do to your data with regards to being able to generate better insights. The second thing is that data is managed. I think someone is not on mute, just check. The second thing is that at this level 1, you are actually having data managed in silos. And people argue about whose data is correct because every person has his own tools, either it's Power BI, you're having someone running Excel, macros and VLOOKUPs, you're having someone who is playing around with R at some different corner or a Python, and you don't have some organization with regards to how you're using data. So people start arguing about what is the correct information. Data quality is still a bigger problem at this level. The second stage is actually opportunistic, which is level 2. And at this level is whereby IT comes in, or someone in business champions how you're able to convert the manual processes of usage of data into automated ways of getting insights and reports. So at this level is whereby you get different kinds of tools being procured. You're either having your reporting tools or visualization tools being procured by the organization. So you can be looking at Tableau, ClickView, OBIE, whatever kind of tools that you're actually procuring to make data more palatable to the consumers. And same level, level 2, you still have some barriers with regards to coming together because people are still using these tools, but in a very decentralized fashion. So your strategy on data is still a bit large because everyone has their view with regards to how they use data. So finance have a view, procurement, IT, if you have an innovation team, everyone has, or a data team, everyone has their own view. Level 3 is where things get a bit exciting. It's called systematic. Previously, in the different model of Gartner, it used to be called enterprise. And at this level is whereby you actually come together as one centralized team, and you're able to actually, you're actually able to look at how do you have different kinds of affordances or different kinds of capabilities being centralized in one team and being driven by either a chief data office or depending where your data team reports to. At this level also is where by agile ways of management, people now start understanding that with different kinds of teams, one person can run the report and can be consumed by different people. At this level as well is whereby you start having new kinds of capability being built. This is where your data scientists starts being recruited. You start having some order with regards to how you consume and produce data. Level 4 is whereby you're actually enjoying the fruits of having proper data capacity and data structures. Differentiating is what the level is called. This is where the CDO is hired. So if you're looking to hire a chief data officer, organically at level 4 is where you hire, but having walked this journey with multiple banks and companies, I know I can come at any level and be able to just show how you transform yourself. So level 4 differentiating is whereby now people start having their strategy starting with data. So if you're looking at how you're looking at customer growth, understanding customer segments, understanding product growth, look analysis, all of that with what is data telling us. And level 5 is you actually teaching yourself to a Google or a Yahoo or a company born in the late third industrial, whereby they actually live within the IT cloud. And at this level, data is your main source of driver with regards to transformation. So I decided just in my presentation because when I was just listening to the levels on how smart is underpinning data and the importance of 4IR, it's important to know how you're able to get the right kind of capacity and potential to use data. So you can shoot some questions, put them in the chat, I'll be able to check them. So let's go into data management and data governance. And I usually start with this question, who owns data? And if it was an open forum, I think most of you will give me different answers. You can be thinking or sketch down your answer somewhere. Some people say it's owned by IT, whereby the IT team is the one who makes decisions about how data is supposed to be produced and consumed and the kind of rules around this. Some people say it's the customer. Now the data private is there. And it's the customer supposed to own all types of data that even we have within the organization. Other people will say it's a business head, it's finance, because they report our numbers. So there are different ways of looking at it. But as you keep on understanding data management as a concept, based on DAMA, which is the Data Management Association, you actually learn that data is owned majorly by the business. And the business here is the person who requires it to work. Either you produce it or you consume it, but never by the technology teams or your data office or your data scientist or your engineer or your analyst or developer. The technical team never owns the data. It's actually the business who makes decisions about the data. And once you're able to cross over this part of data ownership, then the next thing is to know if really data is owned by the business, what are the kind of structures, management approaches that you require to ensure that you have proper management of data. And bear with me, I know I could have talked about the cooler stuff, about AI and how I've been able to drive value in data and earn the bank 7 billion, 8 billion, but this is very important if you're actually looking at how you're going to ensure you're able to drive value from your data. So before using your AI solutions, you have to ensure that you have the right kind of data management structures, and data governance is a topical conversation. So if we cross over the first hurdle of who owns data, the second thing is how do we ensure that we have the right kind of structures to manage data? And this brings me to my next slide, which looks at what are the factors influencing data management. The first one, obviously, is your nature of business. And data management is now a must for all organizations. It just depends on what type of organizations you are. If you are in the financial services, which SMART is in, and you are also serving the health, or you're dealing with financial records or validating access or identity, then you require a lot of data management. Number two is the strategy of the organization. Now, data management, data, AI, all these cool things are never driven by the business at the onset. It must be something that the whole organization decides to transform, and it must come about in your business and overall enterprise strategy. So this is topical for you. If you're going to have a proper data and enterprise strategy, then you have to have data management as one key concept in that. The third one is regulation. Now that people are understanding their rights as data subjects, and people know that data is key to drive 4IR, then people are now starting to say that we have to have a cyber law. We have to have a data management law. We have to ensure that people have the right kind of roles in data. The fourth one is your disposition of the senior leadership. Remember, this is not going to give you benefits quickly, thanks to the Act, the DPA Act. It's easy now to know that you're going to be fined, so people will spend. But previously, if you're going to set up a data team, having data analyst, data quality analyst, and architect, a data governance management analyst, all these kind of roles, we're not giving you value within the first 1 year. So you have to have the right kind of senior data literacy so that they can know exactly what are they funding. And maturity is key, which I've discussed in my previous slides. And for this, I'll just dive in and tell you what are the key roles to actually manage your data. I won't go into most of the detail, but I'll just tell you, you have to have 2 lines of defense with regards to data management. And your first line of this defense is actually the data owners, the data stewards. So for you to say that business owns data, you have to appoint data owners who look at data in specific domains with your business and are able to make decisions about how data is used, how it's cleansed, how it's produced, how it's stored and destroyed with regards to data lifecycle. So the first role there is executive data sponsor. You require this if you're actually starting off your data journey with regards to data management. You also require data owner, a data steward, and a platform owner. And this depends. If you're actually having some platforms that are very technical and they have some technical data elements or data domains, then your platform owner or your system steward, depending on what you call them, is actually going to still be your first line of defense. Your second line is, depending on your maturity, your team that supports your first line. So as I said, the specialized tasks or roles are not really the people who own data, are the people who actually help with regards to ensuring that data is properly used within the organization. So your chief data office, your governance lead, your quality analyst, your architect, your project manager. So all these are second line roles that may either sit centrally, depending on your maturity level, or maybe sitting in a specific function that's able to drive the conversations about data. My next slide is looking at the governance process, and data governance, as like any other key process, has some specific steps that have to be followed to ensure that you have the right kind of practices with regards to data management. If you look at DAMA, if you look at IEEE, if you look at Data Management Institute, all of these organizations have some key domains that you should be looking at with regards to data management. But I'll give you a very simple process of how you can actually ensure that you have the right kind of data governance within each business area or each domain. So let's take an example. If you look at customers as a domain, so the first thing is to manage demand, because you're going to be having people requesting for the different types of data. Now, to properly manage this data, you have to know how are my requests coming in? What are the key elements that people look out for? That takes you to your second step, which is basically identifying critical data elements. Each system, I know the people who are on the call are the techies, they know that the smart system has so many data fields, but out of the 100 data fields, only 6 are critical. We're not saying the rest are not important. We are still going to manage them, but you have to have a list of what is priority with regards to privacy laws, value to the business, quantification, the risk and the cost that is involved in storing, and trying to manage this kind of elements. After that is you create lineage, and maybe these are new technical terms that are bringing to the fore, but you can pen them down and go spend some time and just research about them. Lineage is all about understanding how the data element is created from the source system to the reporting layer. So you have to know when this element is called customer ID in your system, how does it get transformed across different reports or decision-making tools before it's consumed by a user. After that, as you keep on mapping out your lineage, you identify data quality gaps and ensure that you are able to start designing solutions, which takes you to the next level of designing the architecture to resolve data quality gaps. And lastly is from all the 5 preceding steps, you should be able to have your guiding standards and guidelines. And this should be enforced with regards to what you've identified. You identify the critical data elements, you know what should be done in regards to cleansing practices. This is where your policies come into enforce. So this is the process, but all of this don't have to run in a cascading approach. They can be running in parallel, but these are critical things I should tell people. Ensure you have this kind of roles or capabilities as you're looking at data management and data governance. So I'm almost at my last slide, and this slide looks at how do you ensure that you have the right kind of oversight of data within your organization. And data is everyone's business. You have to manage data starting from the executive level, and that's why it's a pyramid. The top team there is actually your quarterly meeting at your senior management level, where the MD or the chief executive is involved, and they have to discuss about changing times in data. You have to have a forum that they look at how do we address some of the data gaps that we have within the enterprise? How do we talk about skills and ensuring that we have the right kind of capacity to drive our data projects? The second monthly cadence meeting is supposed to be the Data Governance Council. And if you do have a data head, a data lead, this is supposed to be run every month. And it comprises of the chief data officer or the head of data and sitting with all the data owners from the business to discuss on a monthly level, how do they look at data challenges? What are the new kinds of requirements with regards to training, implementation of policies, voting over fixing of issues, understanding how to come together to reduce duplication of activities with regards to reporting and the creation of insights and views. So that's something else that is critical. Then the last one is actually a bi-weekly meeting, which is mostly an operational meeting. And this can be led by your stewards, people who report to data owners, and they're actually doing the analysis of quality and analysis of gaps. And they're the people who actually do the legwork. And that's why at the bottom of the pyramid, there are many people who can be involved in this. And this is exactly how you properly govern data within an organization. So I'll just close by looking at the emerging issues in data. As I said, today I was just focusing on data governance and management, but at the other forum I can discuss about the other cooler things, business intelligence, analytics, AI. Fortunately, I've been able to drive very big budgets with regards to data, close to 2 billion. I've also delivered a value from data in different capacities, going to up to 7 billion worth of value in data. And this only comes with understanding your maturity and knowing exactly how do you use data, both from an AI perspective, data science, business intelligence, modern analytics, architecture, having the right kind of tools and capacity. So this is just something key that I said, let me close out and just tell you what you should be looking out for. Number one is new regulation. I won't speak about this. I think Rosemary will be in a better position to tell you more about what is happening from the DPA perspective. Number two is maturity. This is something that people actually put at the back burner, but you just can't be taking up solutions from the vendors and just implementing them and expecting you to actually mature up the different levels of organizations. So I've run maturity models for Cooperative Bank. The time they were actually able to double their profits, it was all driven by data. I'm doing something similar I can discuss about Absa Bank. And the other also being part of different board member groups, I'm able to also guide them on maturity and how to scale up. So this is something you should actually be very serious about and see how to implement it in your organization. And the third one is improper skills. This speaks to capacity. Everyone wants to be a data scientist. And by the way, data scientist is no longer the coolest job in 2021. Now we have the AI engineer as the coolest job. So just having the right kind of capacity and skills. I know there are different forums and boot camps and centers of excellence being created across the country. Make sure that you're also riding on this. Be able to come up with a training calendar, a literacy calendar for yourselves, and train people about what is happening out there and the importance of data. This leadership buying also speaks to data literacy. You'll never get the right kind of support if your CEO cannot speak the way I'm speaking. Okay, not that detailed, but just having the right kind of lingo with regards to what is happening in data. Why should we spend our money here? Adoption challenges. I know that the technical teams will always be one step or two steps ahead of the rest of the business. So the business sometimes will resist to start implementing this data ownership and stewardship kind of thing. So I know that we have to move together, but you'll actually have to ride the different waves of the push-pull approach, whereby at some point, Dennis, your team, you'll be driving data adoption in the organization. At some point, you actually flip this, whereby people now will be excited about data, and they'll know exactly how to be requesting stuff from you. And the last item and the last part of my slide is costs. It's expensive to get some of the skills, so train where you can. For the tools, I've done different strategies whereby you're buying new data hardware and software, recruiting new people, or retraining. I can tell you, even for where I am right now, I never spent any shilling for the first 1 year, because I have done this before, I know how to do it. So you can come up with different strategies, but I know it's expensive. Always remember that you have to ensure that you're able to show value as early as possible to get the funding for the rest part of your activities. And that's it for me.
Oh, wow. I think I was following, and to your conversation, it really even resonates so much with the smart applications, where we are, our journey, talk of data literacy, talk of business data governance, talk of even data democratization, and what is our feel about it. It also made me resonate so much with our group managing director, who would regularly keep us on foot on what is the value of data to this particular company. Thank you so much, Hartnell. I think if I would keep talking, I would water down whatever you said. That's really intelligent conversation. And to that particular end, before I read one of the questions that concerns your particular topic, of course, I'll invite Rosemary for a very important comment. And of course, like you said, sorry, someone is interfering with us. Yeah. To that end, she has even more expertise when it comes to data security, still under BDG, that is Business Data Governance. So I'd like to welcome her just to give her comments on Hartnell's presentation, and of course have a small conversation to the very end. Thank you.
Thanks, Dennis, for inviting me. I'm happy to have gone after Hartnell, because I think Hartnell has spoken to the techies and to the structures implemented in order for an organization to be aligned. From my perspective, which is the regulator perspective, bad for us as by the law where we are. All of us are developing, and I'm happy that I'm speaking to people who handle platforms, develop them, build systems. And the question I'll be answering, how do we bridge? How do we bridge the processes that Hartnell previously given? He mentioned a number of things which I found management and demand, critical data eliminating data lineages, improving data quality, designing data architecture, and enforcement of policies. But at the end of the day, we all have to make sure that in whatever we do, we are aligned with the current regulations in Kenya. Yes, as an organization, smart, and even your customers, you're handling very sensitive kind of data, which is health data. And usually, it's the elephant in the room in many conversations. Many people want to find out who has my health data, what are they doing with it. And I had a very interesting statement by Hartler. Really said that the data belongs to the company. Well, there's something else that's coming in. The data subject is the owner of their data. And we're going to start seeing with the progression of data protection rights. And let me use this word, with clients becoming more woke about their data. They'll come to you as smart and say, look, I ran my card at this particular hospital. I ran it at another one. So Mata has my records. Nairobi Hospital has my records. Yet Smart as an entity has a lot more of my records, say for my year of my journey in that particular year. What other things are we going to start seeing being required of us by the data subjects who are the primary I know that the data is developed in the system, but it wouldn't be there without the original owner of the data who actually puts their card on the machine and actually ran it for one use or the other. And then again, what responsibilities now come to us as holders of such kind of data? So for me, I'll just go back to basics in terms of data protection and what the principles are. So there are various principles that we need to look at as we deal with all the technical, beautiful things that we've been taught from a technical perspective. What are the policy issues that we must have at the back of our minds? Why are we processing the data? Are we processing it lawfully, fairly, and with transparency? Are we processing with a purpose limitation? Like I gave you my data for one particular thing. Will you, as a data controller or processor, take it and use it for other things? And then, of course, data minimization. You only need my data for one particular thing. Will you then go collect other forms of data that are outside? Professor mentioned where we're headed to, the fourth industrial revolution, and where data becomes everything. As organizations, are we going to learn to and I say hold our horses in terms of how much data belonging to people that we get to swallow up? And then are we going to have, in terms of accuracy of data, we need to keep making sure that whatever data you have about people is accurate. And then now storage limitation. We're going to find instances where a data subject will tell you, I no longer want you to have my data. Can you give it back to me? And the law actually says that you need to give it to them in a method, in a way in which they can receive it. And then, of course, there's integrity and confidentiality, which is a big thing in healthcare. I think you guys don't need to be trained on that. It's something that is already aligned with the ethics of your practice. And then, of course, accountability. But what then must we have at the back of our minds at any one time when you're handling data? Are we lawfully processing personal data? Have we thought through, like when a client came to you with this particular data, you know, this amount of data about this person, the healthcare and whatnot, will you then go to a third party and share? How will we handle that? How do we manage our appetites to deliver better, more intuitive products to our customers while keeping in mind the fact that we must act within the law when processing data? And then, of course, there's other issue of, after we've built all our data structures, and I'll keep going fast. I keep saying that it was amazing that Hartnell went before me, because for me, I'm going to underpin the regulatory issues to the technical issues that he has mentioned. So are we going to have a data protection impact assessment before we launch this new product, before we build this new platform? There are certain requirements of the law today that requires to do what we call a data protection impact assessment. What impact will it have on your customers? And this is for you, not just as Smart, but even everybody else on this call that handles certain amounts of data for their customers. And then, of course, the conditions for consent. Do we have consent? By the time I ran my card at Mata, I know somehow Smart will have my data, but who did I give consent to? Did I give consent to the insurance company? And let's look at the broad players in that line of data tracing. There's a healthcare provider whom I have chosen by myself. There's the insurance provider whom maybe I didn't choose, maybe chosen by my employer, or maybe I chose by myself. And then now there's the third layer, the people who process data in between. We have now people now like Smart who then build platforms that all these three entities can use. And then there's me. So what is the interplay between all the parties that are involved. And for this, the law requires us to do a data protection impact assessment. And then, of course, also putting together consent, conditions for consent. And then there's also I've mentioned in Section 46 of the Data Protection Act that I think all of us in this call should acquaint ourselves in terms of personal data relating to the health of a data subject. And it actually gives conditionalities under which you can process that kind of data, where you should only process maybe where it's under the responsibility of a healthcare provider or by a person subject to the obligation of professional secrecy under the law. And of course, the condition has to be met if it is necessary for the reasons of public interest in the area of public health. It is carried out by another person where there's the issues of confidentiality, and a lot is coming up. Today, we're dealing with, we're coming in a very strange time where we never expected. When in a pandemic period, where now health data is actually required as a level of actually ensuring public safety. What rules then are they? What rules are there? And then what responsibility now comes to us as organizations as we handle data? So there has to be, just like was explained earlier, there has to be a data governance structure in an organization. There has to be somebody responsible. The law places, the Data Protection Act places the data protection officer in charge to actually come up and sit with the techies who are building the platform and to do now what I was calling the data protection audit as part of the structures of data governance. There must be that one person who is responsible. The law is flexible. You don't have to hire one yourself. It can be a data protection officer that serves you and maybe serves other people. That's a basic way to explain it. But also there must be stakeholder buy-in. As we're building data systems for analytics, for AI, for big data, of course, everyone is excited that your business will be able to analyze the data that we have, but there must be also, from a data protection perspective, there must be buy-in from stakeholders right at the top. And I've seen organizations where you have the data protection officer and data protection champions. I saw something similar also in the structure that Hartnell had given. And then, of course, how then do we start? Which is the best way as an organization? You're thinking back and you're asking yourself. Last week, the data protection commissioner actually put their website on. Now there's a tool for reporting data breaches. Customers can complain. So how then do I come in? I think for me, it will be learning to start with small wins. First, put in your policies and procedures, audit them, have a look at them, and then now bring in data protection experts who will guide the technical teams in terms of finding out how then do we become compliant. And then, of course, when you start with the smaller wins, then now you go to larger and usually more expensive initiatives, like buying, engaging in infrastructure that you do this, and then maybe certifications for your staff members, trainings, and then at the end of it, of course, I can't end this without mentioning the issue of ethics. All of us are handling sensitive data, which is healthcare data. We need to have the ethics heart at the back of our minds. At any one time, ask yourself, the owner of this particular data is actually the data subject, and their rights are paramount right now. How then do we have operations without finding ourselves on the wrong side of the law, which actually comes with punishments? And that's about it. And I hope I've given an overview that will excite questions that I look forward.
Thank you so much, Rosemary. Rosemary is a public policy officer, public policy officer from Safaricom, and she has a lot of experience, actually a lawyer by profession. At this juncture, allow me just to read one question to Hartnell, and then, of course, respond to Rosemary's query, and then from there, we'll proceed to the next presentation. So the question is, hello, Hartnell. Considering the various levels that you have just mentioned, is there any relationship of the levels to value streams? I hope the question is clear.
Yeah, so before even answering that, I like what Rosemary, she mentioned that there is actually an interplay of ownership, and now we have data privacy coming into fore. So just to qualify and maybe also give clarity upon what she mentioned, So data management has always been there from a long time ago. Actually, the first chief data officer, what is Chief Data Officer 1.0, came about in the 1990s when Yahoo was actually trying to come up with the data kind of strategies. And whatever the chief data officer was doing was basically just running data management. So it was never, I think privacy is something that is new. And fortunately for me, I'm leading both conversations within the bank. And we do have a data protection officer. I also have a head of data management. I have a data governance lead. I have a data management analyst. I have close to 40 people who are looking at data in different kinds of capacities. So it gets a bit complex. One, I think as Rosemary said, privacy now takes first step. We will not even start discussing about management, data management and governance before first getting the consent from the customer. But once the customer gives the consent and says that I am allowing you to or use the data for the following activities, then internally within your organization, you should come up with some data management because you have gotten the consent, but you also have to manage the data that you have gotten consent for. And that's where I think data management and all of these things come into play. But I can tell you, yeah, it depends on different kinds of capacities and structures. For ourselves, we do have the data protection officer who looks at exactly embedding the law. We are also cross-checking and comparing our law to the South African law, because ABSA is also in South Africa, as well as the law, the GDPR. There are some differences. Obviously, some people argue that our law was lifted from GDPR, but I can say it's actually much more, because it has two things. It has one, privacy, and it has privacy looks at the data subject, which is what GDPR always speaks about, but protection looks at exactly what internally are you doing. Transfer of data, all those kind of things. And we're actually having different hats within the bank. There's someone looking at protection, there's someone looking at privacy and protection of data management, as well as AI and all of those kind of things. But nice sentiments from Rosemary. I think we'll keep on discussing. On the question about interplay between value and the different levels of maturity, you can start showing value as early as you actually start working within the organization. You start working on data. So on level one, even if you're still using your Excels and all that, it's all about knowing how to identify the quick wins, identifying how you're able to start showcasing that from the conversations or from the insights I'm getting, I'm actually able to show better leads. So for example, in the bank sector or the financial services sector, you may want to come up with a credit scoring. I think credit scoring is an easy way, but I can talk about leads. You may want to sell a new product to customers. It doesn't matter what maturity level you are at. You as an individual, if you are able to showcase that you're able to analyze what the customers want, be able to come up with a better product and sell it and have a high propensity to buy, then you're actually getting value out of it as early as that. But what usually happens when you start going up the maturity levels, then you're able to consolidate this value and you're able to deliver this more better and more quicker. So at enterprise level or at a systematic level, you're actually able to hit those big numbers, 1 billion, 7 billion. But in the lower levels of data maturity, then you are actually just having small pockets of value that you can still deliver. So there's value, but as you go up, you actually get better at it.
Okay, just a last one for you, I think, which is almost like a yes or no. Who's responsible for the healthcare data, or rather, who is the data owner when it comes to healthcare data? For example, where we sit as Smart, is it Smart? Is it the insurance
You're asking me you're asking me for direct answers. Then they say, but the presenter said that he is the owner. He should start taking care. The right answer and the safe answer here, it depends. Number one, health data is actually not only data subject data is supposed to be taken care, but it's also a specialized category of data. And I see Rosemary also standing on her mic. She'll also add on to this. But if you're talking about ownership of health data, this is really private data, and the data subject laws have precedence before anything. Now, once you get the right kind of consent to manage this data, because this is actually a very special segment or domain of data. Once you have that internally, you'll actually have a person appointed based on your structure. I don't know your structure, but based on your structure to know who is the custodian. And the easy way to just knowing this is either someone who requires it to make a decision, someone who produces it, or someone who stores it. And data management and ownership identification is a process. I have a 30-page deck of showing you how you can identify that. But in your organization, you will have to identify someone, and it may be either the person who does the register, or the person who manages the data, or the person who actually this does a stock take of what customers or what clients we are actually onboarding. But it must be someone who once has the influence. He must be senior enough. And the owner now would be the person we all go to make decisions about how this data is stored, processed within the organization. But remember, data subject rights take precedence above everything else. You have to comply not only to DPA, which is the Kenyan law, but also to GDPR. And maybe I'll let also Rosemary chime in here. Thanks.
I have nothing
Rosemary,
to add.
very
You've worked
brief
on the law.
sentiments.
You've said that you stand with the law, so I'm happy.
Okay. Thank you so much, both Hatnel and Rosemary. Hatnel, our special regards from Smart Applications. I know we are key, not peers, but I also look up to you on key items, but we also partner, given that you've even talked about financial data, which is part of our data. We are really grateful. And I'd say it is for free that Hatnel is actually a powerhouse when it comes to data analytics. It goes without saying. Any person, even from a distance, can tell that actually Hatnel is. Thank you so much for finding time to join us. Even on a short call, you were able to join us, and on a short notice, sorry, you were able to join us and give us a very intelligent conversation, perhaps on data analytics. Clearly, you can see it's an amalgamation of different factors. It's not just business data governance. We also have business intelligence, key other factors, which I'm glad are smart. We are well positioned, and business intelligence is the routine of our day. So at this particular juncture, I'm really grateful to our other guests who have been very patient and following through keenly. I'd like to invite Eric Mwangi, and then he will be followed by Chris Oro. And then last but not least, we'll have Donald Were. And I know there will be a lot of exchange between Chris Oro and Eric Mwangi. So at this juncture, allow me to welcome our next speaker, who is Eric Mwangi. So Eric is actually based in the United Kingdom, and he's consulted for key institutions. That includes him being a venture partner for Google Africa. And then he's also currently the strategic advisor to Fairbank in the United Kingdom. He's also a board member of Fingo Africa. So Eric is not a newbie when it comes actually to blockchain. I've also seen keen interest on him, or rather about BCP, that is Business Continuity Plan, when it comes to blockchain and so on and so forth. Also AI, Eric will touch on the same. You're most welcome, Eric. You're most welcome. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. And I will try and interface blockchain and 4IR, trying to underpin what Prof said earlier. So thank you again. My name is Eric Mwangi, and I'll talk briefly about 4IR and also probably trying to focus on. So just again, what Bitang experiencing a new evolution. Building on the evolution of digital revolution, ideally the third revolution, which was digital. So we are now clearly on the fourth industrial revolution, and with its agile growth, we are seeing fusion of technologies that blurs the lines between physical, digital spheres that will disrupt all industries. And I think I should say one of the key character traits of the fourth industrial revolution is just the exponential speed we are witnessing in the emergence of innovating technologies. We seem to have, a new innovative technology every so often, and it's that kind of speed that I think will determine how many or how companies can be able to assimilate and interact. So I think the four major disruptive 4IR technologies for Africa, probably as Bitange said, is AI, Internet of Things, big data, 3D printing, and probably blockchain and probably drones. And now segueing in probably what I would call health. If I look at the three big ticket items in health, so to speak, is increasing costs, older population, and inequality of access. And this is probably an Africa-wide understanding, and also Kenya. So when we look at what 4IR can do about this, how do you think how 4IR will impact this? I think when you're looking at the business models, We are seeing 4IR brings new business models for delivering health services, such as telemedicine, using AI and blockchain. So I can tell you, for example, where I am in the UK, especially in the pandemic, one of the things we have been able to have is what you call smart docs, whereby I can be able to access my doctor online real time, anytime of the day and night, purely through WhatsApp or through in-house um, in-house technologies. And one thing I know is, since they have access to my medical records, which is interlinked to the hospital, and using technology, knowing that my medical records are safe, we are now seeing that ability where costs are going down in terms of how we can be able to administer health. And I think this is something we'll continue seeing, especially as emerging markets start having access to internet. And I think infrastructure, of course, is a big issue when we think about fire. And then another thing I would say is I've seen doctors being enabled to collect and understand genetic, environmental, and behavioral data. And I think what we're experiencing in the pandemic will be one of the things that we'll be able to understand how behavioral data has affected issues, especially in the pandemic and the administering of new diseases. We'll be able to identify preventive actions, treatment of cures, increasingly tailored for individuals. And I think this is something that I find is exciting, where preventive medicine will be individualized as opposed to just something that is mass offered, whereby every sort of intervention is specifically individual to yourself. And I think that is something that is going to be exciting. And I think when I think about the digitization of health and healthcare, this will be key in addressing the way we look at health. So for example, a good case is apps, wearables. I have a smartwatch, and this is something I think we will be able to see more and more in what I call preventive or predictive analytics, whereby by virtue of the apps will be able to, again, interlink on the smart doc that I talked about. And the doctor can be able to see, probably in terms of my lifestyle, the kind of things I am buying, I am consuming, then have a risk factor of diabetes or whatever it is, the disease they may think. And it's that kind of predictive health that I think is important, especially in cases of Africa, whereby we'll be able to understand what are ailing us, or even, some probably social media, whereby I can be able to chat with people in terms of what I'm doing, and how can we be able to access that information to be able to make better health choices. And this from a medical perspective. And I think that is key. And I think that is actually exciting when you look at just how medicine, how healthcare can be able to be revolutionized in things that probably never thought, in ways we never thought before. So I think that is exciting. But I think we will continue seeing 4IR developing further. And like I said earlier, using blockchain, we can be able to have non-identified data sets of crucial medical research. So what I'm saying is, if, for example, my apps is transferring information to the doc, what I know is, I understand that my data is non-identifiable, my data is safe and cannot be used. So I think that is key, just furthering the conversation of who owns the data. I think when we think about the technologies that are in play, and this in this case blockchain, whereby we know it's immutable, we know it's secure, we know it's safe, then I can be able to assimilate or access some of these technologies. So, but I think what is important as well is we cannot vector 4IR on, probably, like I'm saying, healthcare or manufacturing. We will be able to look at 4IR as a vector of one of many things. So for example, for 4IR in health to be able to be successful, we need to have successful, probably what I would call smart cities. For example, in this case, we will be able to have smart cities that are interconnected, whereby we have IoT in urban transport, where the systems are actually connected to, for example, healthcare. Can you imagine, for example, we don't have to rely on ambulances. I am very sick, and I am going to hospital via public means, but the information from the hospital has been translated to the public transport, whereby I get priority in transportation to the hospital. So it's that kind of thinking, when you start thinking just how big 4IR can be into our society, where everything is interlinked and interconnected in terms of need. So I think that is actually quite exciting. And when I look at probably the greatest impact of 4IR in healthcare, I think will be AI machine learning, probably looking at chatbots, probably what I spoke about earlier, substituting the functionality of primary health providers, where we have a chatbot where you can be able to answer basic questions and probably give basic advice. And then we'll see drones. And I think the biggest case in Rwanda, but I know in Kenya, I think there's a drone company in Limuru that actually transports medicine to Northeastern. And they actually fly what probably call in aviation beyond visual line of sight, whereby literally the same airspace as the aeroplanes. So I think that is amazing, whereby somebody can be sick in Northeastern and medicine is dispatched, and in probably 45 minutes they have it. And I think it's that kind of thinking or that kind of technology that will be able to encompass greater healthcare for our people. And then of course, big data science, where we have Internet of Things, monitoring vaccines, drugs, monitoring race.
Someone kindly mute. You're really interrupting with us. I would request that we drop that person off. It's okay, Eric, you can proceed.
That's fine. So yes, so big data science, then of course 3D printing, and we can imagine just the printing of prosthetics, which are ridiculously expensive, and how that will do to our populations in Africa. And then of course blockchain technologies in access of shared medical records. And then of course we'll have net positive impact on competitiveness, whereby healthcare will probably move away from competing from each other to actually issue of access. And I think that is what we need to center on in terms of this conversation. So I think I'll probably take probably what I would call a 30,000 feet of what I think 4IR will do on healthcare. And it's looking at just how we can imagine our day-to-day functionalities. Can you imagine just chatting, wearing wearables, and the impact of this in healthcare? And I think it's just something that we're probably just beginning to understand the impact. So I'm happy to take any questions, and yes, I think that's it from me. Thank you.
I think I'll give priority to Chris, especially if you have any question to him, and Donald as well, and then we'll follow with the audience. You're most welcome, Chris. If you have any comments, any questions.
Hello, Dennis.
Okay, Donald will come first, no problem. Yes, Donald.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much. Thank you, Eric, for the nice insights on the future, or what we are looking at when you talk about IoT, when you talk about AI, when you talk about for IR in healthcare. And you're actually, most of the things you've said, mine's not a question, but just a comment on the items that you've mentioned, that healthcare is actually a building block of our lifestyle, of our lives. And we have seen innovation in so many other areas, and we need, or actually it is important and fundamental, that we also have an improvement in healthcare, because it is the block that guides all the other innovation. A good mind, a good body will also ensure that all the other sectors are actually moving forward. And therefore, we are looking at having even greater innovations in healthcare, just to improve the sector. So nice insights that you have given. Thank you.
Thanks, yeah, much appreciated.
So how about Chris?
Yeah, healthcare is one of the most regulated industries, I think, across the world. And sometimes the regulation stifles the innovation that can be done, especially around data and what can be collected. How do you think there will be ways where could have creative innovating without stumbling into all the regulation that has been there, especially data analytics and all the privacy laws that are there?
So thank you. I have a different view in terms of regulation on healthcare, and especially the questions around GDPR. Rosemary and Hartnell can come in. When you look at probably what the Asian countries have done, especially in the recent pandemic, one of the key insights in terms of their success is purely access to people. One of the things is access to people's private phone data. And that, especially in South Korea, has been a key determinant. And when you vector it, or when you matrix it conversely to what has happened in the West, where GDPR takes center stage, then the results are there to be seen. So I think there's a fine balance in terms of what we think.
Gilbert, kindly mute.
Yes, so I think there's a fine balance to be had. I think it's something that we need to think about critically in terms of the ownership of who owns the data in terms of private health data, and I think especially when it is for the public good, then I think some form of understanding, some form of leeway should be extrapolated. But I think Rosemary probably is better placed. But I think the case of South Korea is very, very strong in terms of they have access to people's phone data, and the results have been simply amazing.
Okay, thank you so much. So I'll have one question from the audience. Perhaps Walter would love to know what's the difference between chatbots and application programming interfaces in terms of the Internet of Things.
I don't think there's really any different. I think it's just one terminology and how technology has progressed. So the function is more or less the same. It's the ability to be able to have real-time conversations at probably what I would call a semi-basic level for what I would call primary interface, primary care. And I think that is absolutely critical in access and in reduction of costs, especially in healthcare.
I don't know what would be your comment on the space of conversational intelligence or conversational AI in healthcare. How do you think it's going to be a significant factor when it comes to patient engagement?
That's absolutely critical. Just look at China, and I'm looking at it from a conversational commerce perspective. That is huge. Look at TikTok, and that is conversational commerce. So conversational healthcare or conversational healthcare commerce is a new frontier where I think we need to be able to have those types of discussions. Predominantly healthcare has been, especially let me say in third world countries, has been a bit, how do I call it, has been trying to catch up, whereby we don't have this kind of real-time conversations of what's happening, and we don't seem to have that kind of predictive knowledge or predictive understanding of people, lifestyles, movements, and that is one of the things I think that we need to be able to feature on, whereby we have that continuous engagement with healthcare providers in terms of healthcare.
Thank you so much. I think in the interest of time, it allowed me to move to our next speaker. But at this juncture, allow me to very much appreciate Eric Mwangi, again on a very short notice. We actually had a call on text actually on Monday. He said, it's cool, let me look at my calendar, fine. I think that's being a gentleman to this conversation, and we really are grateful. We hope that we're going to proceed with this conversation past this webinar and look at even possible partnerships to this front. And we really are grateful. I hope you've gotten your jab of the COVID-19 vaccine already. Here in Kenya, we are still skeptical and a bit religious on the same. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Dennis.
You're most welcome. To this end, allow me to invite none other than Chris Orwa. So actually, Chris has been the lead data scientist at I&M Bank. He's also been a data engineer at BuildUp. Chris is currently a data science mentor at Jenga School, which is a school that offers some classes. And then he's also a guest lecturer at the University of Nairobi. Currently, he's the lead data scientist, or let me say the data journalist for Nation Media Group. So Chris is also not news. He's not a pedestrian when it comes to things data science, and I've interacted with him severally. I've shared a lot of stories with him when it comes to the retailing and data analytics. You're most welcome, Chris.
Thank you, Dennis. Let me get into the presentation. So I hope you can see my screen.
Yep.
Okay.
It's coming up. Okay, good.
Okay. So I'll take you through how can utilize data for innovation, and mostly in the banking sector, because that's where I've worked for the past 3 years, and how what you need and how you set up a data science team. So to begin with, one of the things, like if you ask from this photo, what do all these people have in common? One of the things you do, you look at probably the agenda, maybe their race, maybe how they're dressed, and etc. before you get able to figure out that. And that's what typically usually do in data science. You have attributes, and then you're trying to figure out commonalities and etc. And these hidden patterns and meanings. And I probably, if I ask this question, would anyone know why all these people have in common? Random answer.
They're happy. They look happy.
Humans. Casually depressed.
Why this bunch of humans together? But actually, for you to, the answer is that all of there, but it's very hard to pick it because there's a musician, there's a driver, there's an athlete, and etc. So when you have all this information, you have to drill down to some interesting patterns, and that's also the time I try to do in data science, to find these hidden, interesting commonalities and patterns that can be used for the benefit of a product, an organization, or driving insights for that case. So let me go to banking as an example. Traditionally, or even according to the law, the bank offers 4 core areas that they do. So they provide you with a wallet, which is an account which you can use for transacting. You put in your salary or process any money for that. And then on top of that, they can offer you savings, a chance to be able to save money for access later on. And then after that, the more they understand about you, they can offer you credit. And then finally, they enable transactions. It could be trade finance, it could be sending money to another country, and etc. So those are the core banking services that are offered. So ever since computers, AI, data science has been there, a lot of startups have mushroomed to come and try and bite part of what the banks offer. And this is an example. If you start on the right hand side, like payments, I think you have M-Pesa, Jumbo Pay, etc. Companies are trying to integrate blockchain into payment systems to make them more legitimate and fraud proof. Then of course you have lendings, and then people are trying to take bits and pieces of the banking sector. But if we take these startups and reorganize them into 4 quadrants, and looking at what value they add within the banking system, so you'd find that on your left hand, you have the credit, where you have all, since mobile money and also mobile apps, mobile phones have been ubiquitous. Now layer in data science and AI into it. A lot of companies are offering credit services, starting from Tala, Branch, and etc. And you can see on the top hand where you have a wallet, an app such as Timiza for ABSA, It's a wallet that allows you to receive money, but also offers you credit. So it's a cross between those two functional products that banks offer. And then on the left hand side, on the right hand side, where you have a wallet and transaction. So you have a wallet that then allows you to do a little bit more, pay your KPLC bills, pay your GoTV, and etc. So you have a wallet which also allows you to do transaction. But when you come to these lower quadrants, savings products, there are very few of them. And actually, M-Pesa sits at the center because M-Pesa offers savings via Mshwari. They offer credit also via Mshwari. It's a transactional system. It's also a wallet that you can use. So it's a truly, you can call it a banking app. But you can see there's so very few startups within these two quadrants, either singularly on this product or combining these two aspects. So if you draw like a regression line of sorts in this area, you'd realize a product around this area is primarily driven by a user ability. If I have more money, I'll need to pay my rent, I'll need to pay my water bills, I need to pay KPLC, parking, ticket, and etc. So products around this area are primarily driven by a user's ability, which is how much money you have. I just want to help you, spend more money or pay whatever you're already paying. But when you come to the space where you're issuing credit or you're offering savings product, and savings, especially in Kenya, is very low amongst the population. This is primarily driven by user behavior. For you to issue credit, you need to look at credit worthiness, you need to look at repayments, method, and etc. So that's why the credit scoring solutions go through a user's data for that case. And then savings is also, how do you entice somebody to save? How do you layer in savings into a product? You have to understand that user behavior. And this is the area where user behavior is required. That's where heavily data science and AI falls into. For you to be successful in this area, you have to understand your users extremely well. For you to be successful in this quadrant, you just need to, put in a product into areas where people already have money, already have certain payments that they're doing. So you're just providing a solution to what they're already doing. But in this quadrant, you're not necessarily, ability does not necessarily drive that product. It's understanding user behavior and creating products that are custom made to them. So this is how, build this quadrant to discover opportunities for innovation around data science in banking area. Probably might be different from healthcare, where the limitation of what you can build as a product is limited due to laws or other ethical concerns. But splitting up, how what are the core things that a healthcare system requires to do: take patient records, track the previous elements that they've had, offer them payment, or maybe offer them credit to pay in future. And I've seen a couple of few startups that are trying to build like Okoa, Tiba, or layer in credit for healthcare system. So this is how we figure out where data is highly applicable and has a lot of use. So how do you figure out your problem? That I want to build a product that offers credit and savings for this population for the country. What do I need? How do I set up so that I am successful? And if you go back to Hartnell's presentation about the levels of maturity, you realize at this level, if I use the levels here presented, you have to be at level 3 and above. You must have data that goes back, let's say 5 years at least. It must be varied. It must cover a certain number of patients. It must cover a certain number of diseases that you're treating, etc. For that case. So number one, you have to be at level 3 and above. And so from a technical perspective, we usually divide this into 4 key parts. So you have this lower quadrant where these are your databases or your specialized databases. If you're collecting text data, you're collecting real-time data, or you need Redis. If you have unstructured data, you need Mongo. And if you have huge amounts of data, Then you use Hadoop together with Spark to be able to manage that data and also be able to pull that data. So once you have your data set up, well, then you pull your data into now your analytics solution. If you're using your AI, your data science tools like TensorFlow and etc. So you pull it into your AI environment to do the analysis, predictions, and etc. Then once you have it, then you deploy that, and the tools that use Docker, Circle CI, and other continuous integrations allows you to continuously build and deploy. Like, you want a dashboard. You want this to generate an SMS that goes into a frontline worker to know that they're entering an area that is, COVID dense or something like that. So it helps you with the deployment part. And then finally, this is now to manage the whole systems. Once you've built your tool, your data science solution to become, it's supporting the whole organization. It's supporting HR, it's supporting finance, it's supporting sales workers. You need to manage everything. I'll say Kubernetes is one of the best for orchestrating deployments across different things. So you'll never need all of this. Most people will just need this too for that, and maybe a bit of deployment if you're building a system for that case. And if you're building a much more larger system, that's when you go to the top right hand for that case. If your system becomes big enough, so you have to think about infrastructure for that case. So one of the things is server locations. Sometimes the IT teams, like all the data science teams, want their own separate server environment as opposed to the rest of the company. You want to mess around with the server, you can do a lot of dealing with crazy amount of data and etc. So that's another consideration. But for a start, most organizations don't need this unless you're dealing with millions of data per day in that case. And finally, one of the things that me having worked in different organizations and trying to figure out how to make data science very effective is how do you deploy data science teams within an organization for that. So you have the very fast option, it's calling the decentralized, where you have different business units. Let's say in a bank, it could be the credit team. It could be you have your branches for that case. You have your legal team, and all of them need some level of data science support, or they're trying to automate as well as make certain predictions for that. So each of them has a data scientist embedded within the team, and they work with that specific business unit to get an output up. Then you have a centralized system where you have a data science team which sits in its own department, and then they get requests from different departments, process that, and then gives that back as an output. And then you have a hybrid system where there's a central data science team or as a data science unit, but then they manage other data scientists who work with other business units, and they consult back with the central team when they feel there's need backup to come to recheck if the analysis is good and they're doing everything very well. Having worked in different companies, the one that sorry.
Very good. I'm trying to.
Okay, thank you so much, Chris. I think I've muted that. You can proceed. Okay, you can unmute. Yeah, you can unmute.
Oh, sorry. So this having worked in different organizations, option one works the best because most of the time you need the data scientists to have the business domain knowledge. They need to sit and see who's running the business unit, whatever they're doing. First of all, you mirror what they're doing and then improve upon it using data science. So that has worked the best. The most horrible one, I think, is a centralized one, because it creates a lot of tension between business and the data science teams, and there's a lot of misunderstanding in that case, and there's a lot of time wasted between back and forth. The hybrid system usually works very well if the organization is very large. There's so many data scientists, especially junior data scientists, and they need like a central team to guide, showcase, overlook their work. So it works, but when the organization is big and you have so many people and there's need for coordination for work. But if I was to vote for, I'd vote for decentralized system, option A for that. So thank you very much. I'll be glad to take in any questions.
Good. Thank you so much, Chris. A very informative, insightful, and intelligent conversation from you as well. I'd like to, of course, give priority to Donald, just to ask a question, and also Eric, feel free to ask any question. And before that, we'll just have a short commercial break with our Human Resources Director at SMART, just to say hi. So maybe a question from Eric or a comment, perhaps.
No. I don't have a question or comment. Thanks.
Okay, good. Oh, good. Thank you. Donald?
No, I don't have a question. Just to thank Chris for the nice presentation.
Yeah, very nice, very intelligent conversation as well. So the audience, do we have any question? So maybe my question would be to Chris. I know there's this buzzword called big data, but you can't talk of big data in each and every organization. How are you seeing small data, especially even in healthcare, being practically in use and being so that not every organization will try to fit into saying we have big data when essentially it's not. What do you think about small data? Where is the infrastructure? Where is the space? Where is the space for growth and implementation when it comes to small data?
Well, I actually think having small data is better than having big data, because once you have a lot of data, you have to manage the data.
Yeah.
You need either specialized systems, equipments to handle that data. And most of the time, even if you have very large amounts of data, first of all, you have to summarize it into, like, let's say you have daily transactions. Like, I cannot look at daily transactions. I need to know what are the averages for the day or for the month, and etc. But most of the time, when you have small data, your ability to just go straight into and say, okay, this is what happened. I fit my data into an Excel. Let me plot some X and Y's, look at trends and patterns that I have. You can get very quickly to an insight, which you can implement in your business. If you have big data, you'll spend 2 or 3 weeks just trying to manage, summarize, and put that data in place. But instead of pitting small data against big data, you can look at, do I have useful data and do I have correct data? Because if you have a well-sampled data and it fits into an Excel sheet, it is just as good enough as having billion rows of data. And most of the time, and in all data science, most of our work usually starts from an Excel, or then you move to Python and R and any other thing. And even finally, once you've done all the crunching, most of the time you push that data back to an Excel sheet to just counter check it or do some quick presentations for it. Most of the time, if you're working with a system where you're collecting data, let's say every day, and it's a healthcare system, maybe people coming in and outside of a hospital, if that is a representative sample of what's happening in the country or other hospitals, don't worry about getting another data. Just analyze your data, and it would be very sufficient. I would give an example. I won't mention the company that I work for, but there are tons of data, and managing the data was a nightmare. So you're like, okay, just get 100,000 customers who mirror the whole population of that. If you analyze the information of those 100 customers, whatever conclusions you find will be exactly the same as if you analyze everyone within in the database. But now with the less stress, with the less worry about computational inefficiencies that you have in that case. So I will only fault small data if it is not a representative sample. It is not a statistically sample that can be used to make any conclusion out of the data.
Exactly, thank you. So I have two quick questions for you, and I'll request you to make it as abstract as you can. Maybe one is how are cloud systems helping us to have fast analysis, especially for data scientists and AI engineers? You can also comment on automated machine learning on the same, and then we'll move to the next question.
Okay, so I mean, cloud services are very good at helping you set up an environment pretty quickly, or they already set up that environment for you. And then you're ingesting data from all the systems that you have within a company. And up to a certain level, they allow you to do drag and drop data analysis. And after the very last funnel of having dashboards and that. So how quickly does it help a data scientist produce and data engineers do work? If you look at the typical work of a data scientist, number one, if you're doing setups, you're doing installations, you're setting up your tools, you waste a lot of time in that. Second thing is having your data, consistent data that you need. So you're writing, code to pull data from different sources. Cloud services frees you from that. And then now it allows you to do what a data scientist is supposed to do. What data am I using? What method am I applying? What outcome am I getting? So you just focus on that, and even the output, like if you're connected to tools like Power BI and etc. to do that. So cloud services frees you from doing the dirty work and focus on what a data scientist is supposed to do. What data do you have? What method did you apply? What conclusion did you find? So it frees you from that. So that's the benefit of the cloud, and also everything always stays available online and can be integrated at any time. It's not sitting on your laptop. It's already accessible by anyone at any time, and you can build API services on top of your analysis and models that you can quickly send to your boss or the person who needs the output of your analysis.
Okay, good. That almost like saying self-service analytics, most definitely. So one last question for you. With sector convergence becoming a simultaneous opportunity and threat, what should companies be looking out for with regards to cross-sectors data collaboration?
So this is both governed by the rules that are there and the laws in the country, as well as the opportunities that can be found. Because I don't think if you asked, okay, are you okay Safaricom merging your data with the healthcare data? Like let's say you really go to Aga Khan, and you allow Safaricom to do that. Most people will say no, and for obvious reasons for that. But I think collaboration always is driven by value and opportunity that's likely to exist. For example, insurance company merging data with hospital data. There's a chance of offering better, even much more lower premiums if you go for individualized insurance options. So there's always looking at what value can be gained by merging two sectors, data from two different sectors for that. Could be reducing inefficiencies or benefits organizations for that, especially if they work together. Or it could be like there's an end benefit to the customer, whether pays less or gets a product that initially did not find for that. So companies should just look for opportunities for creating value, either for the customer or reducing inefficiencies that exist between two companies that already work together.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you so much. And that's actually a very relatable use case to what we do at SMART. That essentially, can we use business intelligence, of course, taking advantage of the state-of-the-art tools that are there for business intelligence, to ensure that for our providers, that is the hospitals, they can be able to make or rather get actionable intelligence from data at a self-service distance without necessarily hiring technical teams. And that's where we have a convergence of thoughts in terms of artificial intelligence and predictive analytics. And that's our major, even at Smart Applications Limited. But of course, we invite furthering of this conversation past this webinar so that you know further what SMART does. Thank you so much, Chris. I think these are conversations you don't want to stop. This is what food is to the body. This is what is to the mind. So I really appreciate Chris. Thank you so much for that intelligent conversation. I hope you'll be with us till, I think we should be closing at around 11:15. I know Donald's presentation is quite brief. But before I cross over to Dawn, allow me to invite our group Human Resources Director just to share her thought of how she's finding the conversation so far, and then we can proceed to Donald. Mary, you're welcome.
Thank you very much, Dennis. I must say that you have done a brilliant job to pull off a very intellectual conversation right here. You brought in some very brilliant charts. I feel like my geekish side is really alert today. This is not my typical conversation, but I must tell you that I have been super alert. For me to be alert for 2 hours discussing data is amazing. Very, very encouraged to know that there's great opportunities ahead. I saw somebody ask what will happen to human beings. But I'm super encouraged because I know nothing can replace the heart. And we're looking to enhance the skills of the heart. And what this technology is coming to do is really to allow humans to be humans and allow technology to do what currently human beings are doing rather than just being humans. So I'm really, really excited about that. Super excited about predictive and diagnostic and descriptive data analytics. The fact that I will be able to know in future that I can put my son into a football academy rather than take him through the whole, system of education is good to know, because it means I don't have to waste time, I don't have to waste money. And so data is very, very important, and where we are going is even more exciting. And I look forward to that. I was also very excited when they presented the opportunities that exist in the education sector, particularly the education sector. I was very keen to hear what Prof was engaging us on, the type of talent that we're producing and the type of talent that we should be producing. This should be really a wake-up call to everyone, and not just the education sector, but even us private sector that are dealing with this data. What will be our contribution to make sure that the curriculum is changing to produce for the technology that is ahead of us, and to produce for this data? We have data. How are we going to use this data to actually design our education sector for purposes of producing the correct talent? Obviously, I'm speaking from a HR perspective. There will be a lot of the talent when I'm speaking. I was also trying to map our organization as all these conversations were going on. I was trying to map our organization, and I hope everybody else was also trying to map the organization. Where are they in terms of their data maturity? And how is the organization going to look like in the future when we already now amassing a lot of data? What type of structures are we going to have, and currently what do we have? So it's been a really, really engaging conversation, I must say, Dennis, and I really am encouraging everybody to put out their questions. From my own assessment, we have quite some experts out here, and feel free to continue asking your questions in the chat and engaging them even more before we come to the end of this conversation. Thank you so much, Dennis. This was a very, very well organized forum, and thank you so much to the speakers for lending us that knowledge. They always say sometimes it's not easy to transfer knowledge, but you've done a very good job to transfer that knowledge.
Thank you.
I give it to you, Dennis.
Thank you so much. That's very relatable. Even though you come from the advent of people analytics, you already shared quite meaningful insights. Allow me to welcome our last speaker. That's none other than Donald Were, who is a fellow of the Institute of Actuaries based in the UK, and holds a master's in actuarial management from Cass Business College. He will talk about predictive analytics in healthcare as we come to the horizon of this particular webinar. I've also shared my email on the chat. Feel free to air your sentiments, perhaps even questions. And if you look forward to these sessions again, we'll also share the recording if need be. So please send your email there, send your number or something, and we'll be able to respond on time. Thank you. You're most welcome, Donald.
Thank you so much, Dennis, and your team for organizing this. And thank you to all our guests for attending. There's been a lot of discussions on predictive analytics, on data science, on AI, on big data. And being the last speaker, my presentation is going to pick a number of items from all that has been said. So I think it's going to be so brief than I expected. Yeah. So we're going to look at, to cap all this discussion and look at how we can apply it in healthcare and what has been done before and what can be done in future, where do we stand as experts in the industry. So thank you so much. My name is Donald. I work at the Insurance Regulatory Authority in Kenya as an actuarial officer. And yeah, let me share my screen so that we can continue. Yeah, so to start this discussion, we're just going to look at an example, and then we can compare and see what exactly is predictive analytics and how can it come into the healthcare system that we have. Yeah, so we'll be looking at the applications in healthcare, or what are some of the items that we must have, the prerequisites that are needed for an industry to claim that it's actually implementing this, and then the challenges, some of the current implementations, then we shall conclude. So to start us off, I'm just going to give an example in something that is common, and I think most of us have interacted with, is what we call the online retail industry. And giving examples of Jumia, Amazon, and all the other sites that we use, Alibaba. So when you log into Jumia, or let me say Amazon, I'm not sure about Jumia, but let me use Amazon. You see, at the moment you log in with your email, you get there's a tab that shows you, given your previous, these are recommendations for you, given your previous probably shopping or your searches and all the other items. And those recommendations are unique to you. They are different from, your recommendations are different from my recommendation when you log into that site. Now, how does Amazon discover some of these things? How do they know that you like to maybe buy a sweater, you like to buy a tablet or such items? So instead of just looking at the demographic averages, like what people in Africa are buying, what people in Europe are buying, what people in Kenya are buying, or what people in Nairobi are looking for, they go deeper into your own personal desires, your own preferences, and your history. So every time you log into Amazon and you start searching for an item, every time you log into Amazon and you start just viewing, even if you don't click any of the items, just seeing it. So the site records how long you view a given page, which items do you click, which ones do you search, even if you don't buy them. And all this information is put together, and it builds on the recommendations that Amazon can give you on your future sales. And now this one benefits them to ensure that they don't bombard you with a lot of items that you don't need, but they give you the specific specific items that they are key, and they know that there are high chances that you'll buy them, and therefore increase their revenue and ultimately the profits. So how can this be taken into healthcare? How can this be improved and even be used into healthcare, which is an important aspect of our lives? So we're going to look at some of the areas that healthcare can actually leverage this. And from the discussion that we have had, predictive analytics can be used to improve both the efficiency, that is the operational efficiency for an organization, or to increase the value or improve the value that is offered to the customers. So we'll be looking at, in healthcare, there are different areas. So we have operations, we have the treatment, and so many items, but I'll just pick three. That is the diagnosis and treatment, and then we look at operations, and then we look at healthcare insurance. So for treatment and diagnosis, how can we implement predictive analytics to ensure that we offer better quality to our customers, who are the patients? The first one will be a lifestyle and nutrition. And just maybe to start off and an overview, it is usually a common saying that our health, or rather our personal well-being, is a function of our lifestyle, whatever we do on each day and whatever we eat. That means if a hospital or another organization can be able to understand what each and every person eats, what we do on each and every day, how often do you exercise, where do you exercise, which form of exercise do you do, is it gym services, weightlifting, is it running, is it just jogging? which kind of foods do you eat and how often do you eat them? And so using all this information, we can be able to assess your risk of contracting certain illnesses. So therefore, it would be so easy for us to have an early diagnosis of whatever you are suffering from. So let's say, for instance, a company that issues, let's say, credit cards or the shopping cards that we use, even from banks and other areas. So it can, if it can be able to track the payments that you make every day and understand what are the items that you pay for each and every day, the food that you buy in supermarkets, the areas, the amenities that you pay for, if it is a park, maybe a sports center. So if this company were to collaborate with maybe a hospital or an insurance company or any other institution to come up with a model on your risk of contracting certain illnesses, then it will be so much easy to detect earlier some of these illnesses earlier, even before you fall sick. And that means it will be easier to correct or to treat or even to avoid some of the common illnesses that we face. And then you have also seen we are looking to have changes in how we handle psychiatric care. So for instance, normally we would expect that patients will meet with a psychiatrist, discuss, share whatever they are going through, and then probably some recommendations will be made on whatever you can do. Right now we have companies that are researching on how we can, instead of having to meet probably every day or every week or every month with their doctor, now there are researches being done on how can we use discussions that you have with your friends, the discussions that you post on social media, the discussions that you post probably in events that you attend. How can we use them to assess your level of maybe psychiatric need? So this could be different from each and every person, and therefore even the recommendations that are given will also be so much specific to the issues affecting a given customer or a given patient. So we are moving away from the era of just generalizing treatment, from an era of giving people an average treatment, but to specifics, to items that are affecting each and every person and each day. And definitely to cap all this together, we are talking about, this one brings us back to the discussion we've been having of the permissions in sharing data, the permissions on what that data can be used for, and all the other items. So it all depends on which kind of data we can access and how we can use them. And then lastly, we also have researches going on how medical imaging can be used to diagnose some of the illnesses that cannot actually be seen, especially in the early stages of development. So for instance, if it is oncologists using the MRIs and all the other, sorry?
Okay, you can proceed.
Yeah, okay, thank you. All the other images, just to assess the likelihood that you could be suffering from a given disease, even when it is at early stages of development. Yeah, and then when it comes to items to do with the operations, so it is important that hospitals can actually monitor the way their patients are doing. So that means whenever you are released from a given hospital, it is important that the hospital can understand how you are faring on each and every day. And then what are the chances that you'll come back or your condition will deteriorate even when you're at home. Now, it will be so hard to contact patients, each and every patient every day, to give them phone calls and probably to ask them to come in for checkups more frequently. It will be costly and it will also be hectic. But what if we made sure that we can reach all our patients at the same time, at probably cheaply or more efficiently by using the technologies we talked about, like wearables. So whenever you walk around, probably you're having a watch, a smartwatch that can check your blood pressure, that can check the condition of your heart, it can check your breathing, it can check your pulse, it can check so many of other items, which are usually proxies for your personal health. So that means at any given moment, a hospital can know how a given patient we released on this given date is doing by measuring those proxy elements. And therefore, it can also estimate what are the chances that this patient is likely to come back, and what can we do to remedy to prevent deterioration of their condition. So that means this hospital will be able to reach so many patients at a go. It will also be able to ensure that the communications it gives to their patients, it is targeted to them, so that a patient does not send blast SMSs on how you can improve your mental condition, on how you can improve your diet to every patient, even to those patients who are healthy, and those patients who are actually living a better, who are in better condition. So we can target how we communicate to our patients, how we advise them, how we even talk to them on different items. And to add to this, by analyzing how our customers are feeling, the reviews they give on our services, and the comments they give. Right now, all the communications, or 90% of the communications, are happening on social media sites. So it is important that we be able to collect all this information. So for instance, we have Twitter has a functionality where you can collect, you can analyze the tweets on a given hashtag, on a given topic of discussion, to understand what are the sentiments. So for instance, if a hospital is looking to assess how people are feeling about their services, a simple analysis of the tweets, posts on Facebook and all the other places, and even the reviews on their websites, using these natural language processing systems, can help to improve the quality of service they offer without having to design questionnaires that may not be filled by customers all around them. And definitely, once you can estimate the chances of the risks of your patients, you can estimate how they like your products or how they like your services, then you can easily allocate your resources very well to reduce things like downtimes when critical services are required. And the third, and probably an important aspect of health is what we call health insurance. So most of us, we have interacted with insurance at one point or another. So if it is motor insurance, all the other types that you have used. But health insurance is so much important because ensuring that your body can be taken care of at any given moment gives you the peace to handle so many other aspects of your life. So how do insurance companies decide on the premium that they charge you? So an insurance company will have to estimate the chances that you may visit a hospital, and they'll also have to estimate which services you'll expect or you'll be looking for in a hospital, and then how much that will cost them if they were to pay for you. So the more data that the insurance company has, and the more relevant that data, the better they have, the better they'll be at setting that premium. So if the company does not have adequate information on your chances of visiting a hospital or your medical condition, they always add something to the premium that we call a contingency allowance. So this ensures that in case you visit the hospital more than they expected, or you visit a hospital they did not expect, they have sufficient money to pay for your costs. So to reduce such kinds of probably to reduce the level of that premium, or just to increase, to ensure that that service is available for you. Because if an insurance company cannot decide on the exact, on these items, like your chances of visiting a hospital, if it cannot know the expected cost of treating you, it may not give you that cover. And that means you'll be walking around uninsured, and therefore higher chances that you might not be able to afford healthcare or proper healthcare services. So to avoid such items, what if an insurance company partnering with a hospital and another, probably a smart company like Smart Applications, were to share data from the discussions that we have been having before? What if they were to share data so that they really understand what are the aspects of hospitalization that are unique to each and every person seeking insurance? And therefore, it would be easier for them to design products that are specific to each and every person, services that are specific to you, and they are not, probably they do not impact other patients. They'll also be able to reduce the premiums because they can now estimate with a good level of understanding the chances that you fall sick. Sorry.
It's okay, you can
Yeah.
proceed.
Yeah. So so basically, this is just healthcare, and from the discussion we have had, there's still so much that an insurance company or a hospital can do to ensure that they offer better services to their customers. But what are some of the items that are so much important that they have to be there for we to claim that we are actually using predictive analytics, or even for us to use predictive analytics? Because in the end, it's not about how fancy your models are, it's not about how fancy the insurance products or even the health services are, but what is the value that you're offering to your customers? What exactly are you giving customers or the patients that will be so they'll be so happy to come back the next time uh, yeah, probably they feel sick, or they can recommend their friends. So just a quick one, it is important that you have sufficient data and that you have relevant data. And then, so on the same concept of data, you need to look at all the discussions that you have had about data protection and how to manage that data, even once you have had it. So for instance, things like who owns that data, who ensures, who is responsible for taking care of that data, and then who should benefit from any advantages that come from collecting all that information. So should patients be paid for their data being used in probably being used by other third parties, even if it means giving them better products? Who should be paid and who should benefit from that data? And then once you have the data, you definitely need the infrastructure. And this has been a big challenge, especially when it comes to healthcare issues. When you look at, let's say, the infrastructure landscape in Kenya, there are some areas that do not have adequate connectivity, and therefore even monitoring the patients remotely could be a very big challenge. So we may have the data, we may have the insights that we need, but we may lack the necessary infrastructure to collect, store, and even manipulate this data. So it is necessary that we understand if we have the sufficient infrastructure to use this data in the way that we need, so that the results that we have or that we get can be helpful to the customers or to our end users. And then lastly, we need experts in this field. We need people who can come up with, and we need experts along the whole value chain. So first we'll need guys who can come up with the research questions. So for instance, if we're looking at all the data a hospital has collected and how it can be used to reduce or to improve the quality of services that we offer to patients. So you need somebody to come up with the questions, the right questions that can be asked. How can this data be used to improve probably the medication regime, or how can it be used to improve the quality of stay of a patient in a given hospital? And then you'll need experts to provide answers. That means building the infrastructure that is required, building the models, the predictive models, storing that data, cleaning that data, making sure that you're using the relevant data. And then lastly, you'll need experts who can be able to interpret the results that you get from those analysis. So for instance, you'll need doctors who understand the results that the models are generating, so that they know exactly where and how to use them. It will be of no use having a model or having probably results that cannot be interpreted by the people who are actually supposed to use them. So you need to ensure that everyone understands exactly where they fall in this value chain. And I'll just build on the last slide and to mention some of the challenges. So when you look at healthcare is an industry that has probably, I can say, the margin of error is very small, because you're dealing with people's bodies, and we usually say that bodies have no spare parts. So that means if you're designing anything that should be used especially directly to aid in treatment, to aid in diagnosis and all the other aspects, the chances or the severity of giving a wrong diagnosis could be higher than in other industries. So it is important. It's a very big challenge, and that means a lot of investment and has to go into trying to use to collect the relevant data, trying to use this data in the right way, so that we don't make errors that can be avoided. And then the regulations, given the low margin of error in medical or in healthcare, the regulations are also very high. You'll find that most of the healthcare data that is available publicly is actually anonymized. You cannot link it to a specific patient or to a specific, even a specific hospital. So that means it is so hard to generate analysis that is specific to personalize that experience. So that means regulations are still so strict on how you can use medical data. And actually, this is to protect patients, because medical data, as we know it, is actually very, it can be so much personal at some level. Yeah, and definitely the infrastructure and expertise that we have discussed in the previous slide. So who are some of the people or some of the implementations that have been done in this field? So these are just an example of companies that are doing this, and probably at a larger scale. And you can just look into them and later and understand what they're doing, at what point of the value chain are they coming in, and what are they offering to the ultimate users of their services. But I'll just talk about one company, which is Verily. So Verily, they have partnered with another company that manufactures what we call glucometers. So their aspect is being able to monitor the glucose level in patients at continuously. So instead of having to measure glucose level probably in probably after a month or after a week or half yearly, so they're doing it continuously. So they're coming up with a device that can be used to monitor the glucose levels among diabetic patients, and therefore to ensure that in case there are sharp increases or decreases in the glucose level, they can be able to be detected early before it becomes dangerous for that patient. And so this is something they've been doing, and actually they're researching on that. And you can just look into them and see some of the items they have done. Yeah, so just to put all this together and to also put together all the discussions that you have had from Prof to the last one, if you talk to data, data will talk to you if you're willing to listen. So if you have the will and the patience to sit down and listen to what data is saying, you can actually pick out items that can improve the value that you offer to your clients, and not just in healthcare, but in so many other industries or in whichever field that you are looking at. So thank you so much, Dennis, for inviting me to talk on this. And we can just link up and continue this discussion later, because this is something that is not exhaustive. Thank you.
Very true. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Donald. We really are grateful for staying with us through to the tail end, being very patient, of course, sharing very good insights as to what predictive analytics can do when it comes to healthcare. We really appreciate your time and your expertise as well in the industry, especially in insurance. And we appreciate that you've been able to join us too. So at this juncture, I welcome any questions. And of course, I'll give priority to Chris. And I can see we also have Mon here with us. And then from there, I'll invite questions from the audience. Just type it on the chat. We'll be able to respond on time. So any questions? Maybe Chris, your sentiments and maybe a question or so. Maybe Eric, do you have any question or any sentiment? Okay, good. I invite the audience just to type in. Have you got any questions so far? Any question from our audience? Okay, good, none. So maybe just a question to Don would be in the most practical sense, how do you see predictive analytics playing a key role when it comes to universal healthcare? I know that's a use case that it's a conversation that is ongoing in Kenya, and the most disturbing news would be health financing is still an issue. We are talking about 6,000 per household in terms of health financing, but do we assume that the larger population would still afford that 6,000 when we have a lot of problems around? Forget about even BPI.
Yeah, thank you, Dennis. I think even before we talk about the 6,000, I think right now for NHIF, I think there's I think per person, I think we usually have the contribution of about 500 shillings per month per person, and still so many other households have not been able to afford that, or rather it's not a priority to them, because when you talk about healthcare is so much expensive, and it might seem cheap because so many people decide to abscond it because they cannot afford proper healthcare. So healthcare is an expensive affair, and most people actually, instead of having to take their families and friends through the traumatic stage of fundraising and all the other aspects, they just decide let's not go through that. Let's not probably. Let's just leave it so that we don't have to go. Sorry, hello. Yeah,
it's okay.
Yeah. So most people decide to avoid all the hassle, and so the government is just looking at ways in which we can ensure that everyone can afford healthcare, not just healthcare, but proper healthcare. And I think one of the industries that will play a key role in this universal healthcare will be the insurance sector, because of the ability to provide funding during, because healthcare is unpredictable. Yeah. So for an insurer, it will be so much important that they have sufficient data, because these are businesses and they're not in business to make losses, or they're not in business to try. They're in business to make profits also, even as they offer products to customers. And therefore, it will be important that they have sufficient information on what they can offer. But still, as we have said, we may not have all the information that we need when it comes to healthcare because of the regulations, and also because of the personal nature of the industry. Like, you wouldn't like most of your data to be known by a different person just because you're going to afford insurance. What if it is used for another aspect that you have not allowed, or you have not been given permission for? So analytics or data analytics will be an important aspect in ensuring that better, probably understanding which services do people need, so that they can be prioritized. So which illnesses are so much, they're common, so that they can be prioritized in the cover. And then what are the chances, what are the infection rates and all the other aspects, so that they can be used in pricing, in insurance pricing, and to ensure that customers have better covers and better protection or healthcare services. And something that was mentioned earlier is we'll need a good, now we don't need to collect data on everyone in the country to understand, to give them better services. We just need a good population that we can use to ensure that that is representative of everyone, to ensure that we get, we now come up with ways in which we can assist. So it is actually a challenge, but I think there are ways in which analytics will be important in ensuring that universal healthcare is achieved.
Okay, thank you. And to our very last question from Grace is, would hospitals be interested in monitoring patients' health and taking measures proactively if they are in business?
Yeah, I think, and in fact, they'll be interested, especially because they're in business. Look, one of the aspects of being in business is you want to retain your customers. You want to ensure that, let's say hospital A, or let me use current hospitals that we know, like Aga Khan or maybe Mata. So Aga Khan would like to retain their customers, their patients, but their customers to them. So they would like to retain them so that they don't move to a different hospital. And therefore, they have to look for ways in which they ensure that the service is better for them. And therefore, one of these ways is ensuring that you constantly, you just don't offer treatment to this client, but you work with them in their, let me just use illness journey, although illness may not be a journey, but let's just use the illness journey or their health journey, so that at every moment, they know that there's somebody looking after me. Yeah, and some patients, not all patients will accept actually such kind of an arrangement, because not everyone would like their items to be, would like to be monitored every second of their life. And we have seen interested in using it, and then he tied it on his dog, and then the dog had, I think, a heart attack or something. So the dog was saved, thinking that this person was this guy was dying. So I think hospitals will be interested, especially they're in business, especially because of the business aspect, to ensure that they are with this client at each and every stage of their journey. They don't lose them to another hospital because they did not take care of them.
Sure. That's almost like a catch-22 question. You're not sure whether
Yeah,
to do
and
this or do
probably, sorry, Dennis, just to add on that, there's a nice comment about how microinsurance can come in to improve the aspect of universal healthcare, because with microinsurance, we can even go to the, we can look now to specific groups of people. Instead of insuring each person individually, we can even leverage what we call, like what we have in Kenya, things like chamas, a group of maybe border riders, a group of maybe hawkers, a group of, so you see, when you come in as a group, instead of coming in individually, it is, so the group aspects ensures that the coverage, even insurance companies can give you a better deal or can offer a better services to you as a group, because you even have bargaining power as a group than individually.
Okay. Thank you so much. So I'll just read out the comment, and then I invite our group technology director or the director of technology to move a vote of thanks. So Remy Wanjala says that, so at Donald, for UHC, I believe we need to leverage on microinsurance models. Based on this industry, there's not enough data to refer to or to make reference on. So do you think there are any other models or study cases beside healthcare that would help advise microinsurance delivery? Maybe you just respond to that very abstractly so that we can close.
Yeah, so do you think there are other models or study cases besides healthcare that could help advise microinsurance delivery? Yeah, so just as I've mentioned, for that was in healthcare, but we have, there's a team, I think in Kisumu, that is looking at how we can offer better motor insurance to border riders. And looking at, instead of offering border rider individually, collecting a number of border riders together, and then making it like it is a group initiative for them to get insurance. So that means they'll be concerned, and the team is pegging things like premiums on previous claims within that group. So if a member of the group is claiming so much, and then that means the group will pay more premium the next time they renew their cover. So then it will be in the incentive, the group will have an incentive to ensure that they control the number of claims to reduce things like fraud and other things, because in the end, one person frauding the whole group increases the premium for that group the next time. And that means you can collect so many other information within the group, because they know each other and they trust each other, than having to look for an outsider or a new person from an insurance company who is maybe treated like somebody who is a fraud or a liar or something like that, from the aspects that people understand insurance. So microinsurance can be a very good way of implementing this, and I'm sure that is one of the aspects that is being considered. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, Donald, for the wild bath of really intelligent ideas, insights onto what is the role of predictive analytics in healthcare. We do appreciate your talk. That was wonderful. That was exciting. To we as SMART, we like to say that this is how we do our things, and we would further this conversation to subsequent webinars, at least per quarter or perhaps the next time that we are going to communicate. And we invite you to reach out to us in case you need any solutions when it comes to business intelligence, because we are here to offer that, and we have the capability using the state-of-the-art tools. We appreciate your time being here. And at this juncture, allow me to welcome none other than Collins Meno, who is the Group Director of Technology at Smart Applications International. You're most welcome, Collins.
Thank you very much, Dennis, for steering this intelligent conversation, as Mary puts it. And to everyone, as Smart Applications, we're very privileged that you could spare almost 3 hours to be with us and join us for this webinar, because we know you definitely may have had other engagements to attend to, but you instead chose to be with us here. So we do not take that for granted. Allow me to give a special thanks to our panelists for taking time to prepare for this webinar. They took their time to prepare the presentations, align their thoughts, and make sure that they were here with us and spare a moment to talk to us. Professor Bitange Ndemo, our keynote speaker, talked to us about fourth industrial revolution, and we are grateful that he could actually share his insights and his experience around this subject. Hatnell walked us through the data governance and management, and specifically issues around maturity model and how an organization can grow and then demonstrate value that emanates from using data to drive business decisions. So thank you to Hatnell. Rosemary, very insightful thoughts around taking a regulatory angle in as far as data is concerned, data management is concerned. So your perspective from a legal point of view was very useful. Thank you, Mary. Eric spoke to us, joining us from UK, talked to us again on fourth industrial revolution, especially in healthcare. And we do not take it for granted that you could spare a moment to join us. Chris talks to us about leveraging data to drive innovation. So borrowing from one of the quotes that he mentioned, or rather just an analogy of data being the new oil, what Chris was telling us is that oil in itself, for example, is useless when it's on the ground. But the moment you mine it, process it, refine it, and sell it, you now start deriving value out of it. So what Chris was really telling us is that data is here with us. It's like oil, it's useless when you're not using it, but you can now mine this data and then use it to drive innovative products and solutions and make money out of it. So thank you, Chris. Donald gave us his angle in terms of use of predictive analytics, especially in healthcare. And just to borrow his parting shot, that data will talk to you if you're willing to listen. That is quite powerful. And thank you, Donald, for sparing a moment to join us for this webinar. And we look forward to interacting with our panelists in future webinars. A special thank you to our customers and those of us whom I would refer to as friends of Smart. We had about 240 people joining us today, and we truly appreciate you coming to be here with us. We had several questions that were posted on the chat. We may not have gone through each of them, or we may not have gone through each of them in a manner that perhaps met the expectation of the person who was asking. So we're going to look again at the questions, and we would be glad to share responses with all of you so that we make sure that all the conversations that happened today, all the insights, all the questions that came in, all the suggestions are taken into consideration, and then we share with everybody. So we would request that you share your contact details perhaps with our Dennis Kevongo, our moderator for the day. You can directly message him with your email address so that we can then share information from this conversation. Would also wish to share the recording if you want to review it at a later date, and or maybe share it also with colleagues. Otherwise, thank you, and back to you, Dennis.
Thank you so much, Collins. Thank you so much for those very moving remarks and to the Thanksgiving. At this juncture, I'd like to wish you well in your journey to retool, reskill, and of course, leverage on big data, leverage on analytics, and leverage on the cloud computing platforms that are available there for you to be able to make data-driven decisions. I believe you've been able to walk with us through the journey, and you understand the calibration of each and every idea that should be able to help you achieve and be a data-driven organization. To this end, I'll not finish without appreciating the entire Smart Applications group, and more specifically, the Electronic Data Solutions Department led by Sarah Waithera, and of course, our group Chief Operations Officer, that is Isaiah Musiori. We really appreciate what you've done for us here today, and we wish you well. Otherwise, to the rest of you, wish you the very best. May you have an exciting weekend, perhaps a Super Friday, because this has been one of the best conversations of this particular month. Thank you so much. Feel free to drop.
Thank you, Dennis. Bye-bye.
Most welcome. Thank you.